Well, good morning, everyone. It's almost 11:32. We don't have a lot of time, but we have a lot of material to cover in a half an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and get started now that it's 11:32. Good morning, everyone. My name's Carson Williams. I'm a financial aid representative in the financial aid office at Sonoma State University. I'm going to give you a presentation today for Seawolf Decision Day 2020 called Financial Aid Essentials. So a lot of people, when they come to college, one of the main questions they have is, how am I going to pay for it? So as part of our introduction here, I want to orientate you to the main Sonoma State University website. This is where you're going to be able to branch out and find all the places you need to go on campus. It does have a nice header at the top about what's going on due to COVID-19. But I do want to draw your attention to deadline extended to June 1st. And the enrollment reservation deposit's $50. So good to note right there on the main SSU webpage. But a key point that you want to learn from this presentation is to contact the right people. If you have questions about housing, you want to contact housing. If you have questions about financial aid, you want to contact financial aid. And I was explaining to the moderators earlier, your sister's cousin's friend's friend from around the way is not the best source of financial aid information. Everybody's situation is different, so you want to make sure you go right to the source, the financial aid office. Now, when you're out looking for schools, freshman year is probably the toughest because you have to decide on a school. You want to pick the right school, hopefully. The right school, the right fit ensures a greater chance that students going to graduate, right? But as you compare across schools, if you start to dial in on 1 to 3 schools, then you want to start interacting with those financial aid offices directly. Any financial aid office will give you general information about the FAFSA or California Aid or the California Dream application. But once you start to settle down on a couple of schools, you want to start to interact directly with those financial aid offices. So from our main Sonoma State webpage here, if you look in the right-hand corner, there's 3 hash marks. I prefer to use a website's A through Z index. And if we have the alphabet here, I'm going to go for F for financial aid. Then I'm going to scroll down to the financial aid office here. And now I'm going to land at the financial aid office homepage. On the financial aid office homepage at Sonoma State, all the important information that's upcoming will be right there. You'll see we have a nice big section about COVID-19. And the key thing here is we're open for business. So please come to our website and look and see what's going on. We've got location and hours. Contact us in English. You'll see I'm right here. I handle all students A through DT. Hey, and if you want to do it in Spanish, we got it all in Spanish. So remember, go to the source, contact us. We're open for business. And next, we're going to jump into the PowerPoint. And let's go ahead and make it full screen. Oops. All right, so welcome to the PowerPoint piece of this for Seawolf Decision Day. And here's our agenda. Basically, there's 2 main sections: how payments work, and then figuring out your financing options. So there's deadlines, of course. There's deposits. There's financial aid deferment. What does that mean? I'll talk about that more in a moment. Figuring out your financing options. Going to school has costs. There's three types of costs of attendance: living at home with parents, living on a college campus, and living off campus. We'll talk a little bit more about costs.
Carson, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's Erin. It looks like we can't actually see the slides.
On full screen?
Yeah.
You want me to take it off full screen? How about that?
Yeah, let's see. Maybe try unscreen sharing. Okay, some people can see and some people can't see. So maybe try unscreen sharing and then rescreen sharing.
All right. I don't have to go into full screen mode. Let's let's try that.
Okay, and maybe try again.
Can you see that?
Yes, now we can see it.
Yeah, I could just stay in the non-full screen.
Perfect. It looks like everyone else that wasn't able to see it can see it now. So yeah, that's perfect.
All right, we'll just hang out in this for a minute, and that way, in case that was the issue. So basically 2 main sections. You got to figure out your costs and then how to pay for those costs, right? Everything's expensive these days. So let's go ahead and, oops, click. All right, so how payments work, deadlines. So let's take this out of the context of a new student. As a new student, you're going to have different deadlines for your first semester. But traditionally, any semester for an SSU student, your fees are due by July 1st for fall, and your fees are due January 1st for spring. Those are your mandatory registration charges. Here in the state of California, we don't like to call them tuition. We don't like to call them fees. We call them mandatory registration charges. So those are actually your tuition. And then we have on-campus housing. A lot of times people are worried about this, but you pay your $300 housing deposit that goes towards your first housing charge. And what I want to explain about all these things is the deposits are just kind of a one-time thing. And then for your on-campus housing, you will have monthly payments if your financial aid is not enough to cover all of your housing in one lump sum. When you get your housing contract, you'll have those dates laid out for you. And I have the general dates. It's usually August 1st, September 1st, October 1st. And then your payments may vary depending on the dorm that you choose down here. And all freshmen have to have a meal plan. And if you look at the housing website, the meal plan is actually included in the cost. So when we're talking about deposits, and you saw on that first screen for the Sonoma State University website, that $50 registration deposit goes towards your fall semester fees. So if your fall fees were $3,976, they're now $3,926 because you just prepaid it by $50. That $50 deposit is only your first semester. You won't ever pay that again. But going on to the housing deposit, that's every year. You need to pay that housing deposit to secure your place. Our campus, students tend to like to live on campus. The dorms are pretty, they're really nice. So on-campus living is in high demand. So that's why we charge a deposit for the most part. But that's prepaying your first housing charge by $300. Now, hopefully you've all applied for financial aid. If you haven't, don't panic. You can still apply at FAFSA.gov. Or if you're a California Dream App person, you can still go to CSAC's website and apply there too. But at the end of the day, you've got mandatory charges that you have to pay, which is your tuition. And those tuition and fees are going to be deferred until the start of the fall semester when financial aid pays. Likewise, spring fees will be deferred until the start of the spring semester when spring fees pay. Or I'm sorry, my bad, when financial aid pays at the start of spring. So we have mandatory registration charges, tuition and fees. If your financial aid award offer is equal to or greater than your mandatory registration charges, you don't have to make a payment by July 1st if you're a normally attending student or by your August deadline if you're a new student. Your tuition and fees will sit out there until financial aid authorizes and pays at the start of the fall semester. However, you're going to continue to get billing notices, right? After you register for classes, charges get put on the student account and you're going to start getting monthly billing notices, and that's normal. If you do the math and you go look at your award offer in MySSU and you know your financial aid is greater than or equal to your mandatory registration charges, then you're not going to have to worry about making a payment by the deadline because those charges are deferred until the start of the semester when aid pays those. But just keep in mind, you'll still get a billing notice until that happens, right? So billing notice until fees are paid. Now, the second bullet point there, if your financial aid award only covers part of your mandatory charges, you do want to pay the balance before the deadline date. And typically freshmen, the deadline will be sometime in August. So here's a hypothetical. If your tuition was $3,000 and your financial aid was only $2,000, then you'd pay $1,000 by the deadline date. Next, we want to talk about housing payments. Housing payments start in August for fall, January for spring, and they can be deferred too. If your financial aid is equal to or greater than your mandatory registration charges and your housing charges, then your housing charges are deferred as well. And the way financial aid disperses at Sonoma State, and this is really a federal requirement, is when financial aid disperses, it has to pay tuition and fees first. Anything after that, housing charges, that can be paid second with financial aid. And everybody's financial aid is going to stretch to some point or another, and you might not have enough financial aid to cover your mandatory registration charges and housing charges, and you may have to follow a monthly payment schedule for those housing charges. So a little bit of detail on that. So going back to costs, so we have university charges, we have on-campus charges. A lot of times students forget these other items: books, transportation, parking permits, and personal miscellaneous day-to-day expenses. And in those personal miscellaneous day-to-day expenses, oftentimes they forget laundry, shampoo, conditioner, soap. stuff like that. Those are very important things to budget. And now with books, I want to point out there's kind of the expectation that you come prepared for college and have that money for your books out of pocket. If you have problems with your financial aid, if you were selected for verification or have eligibility issues or repayment issues at another school and you're transferring in as a new student, and your financial aid's not going to pay until the first, second, third week of the semester, then you want to pay for your books. Because if you wait till your financial aid disperses, you may be stuck buying new copies and not find any books to rent as well. So there's kind of that expectation that college is a planned expense and you should be prepared to pay for those books out of pocket and not wait for financial aid to disperse at the start of the fall semester for that. Just as a heads up. So going back to deposits, deposits are advance payments on additional fees. The $50 goes towards your first registration charges. Like I mentioned earlier, if your tuition was $39.76, then your fall semester it's really $39.26 because you prepaid $50. Your first housing payment is going to be $300 less too if you paid a housing deposit. And by the way, you don't have to have on-campus housing to be a freshman. Remember, there's 3 types of cost of attendance at any school: living off campus with parents, and living on campus. So now you have all these charges, right? Mandatory registration fees, possibly housing, or maybe you're living off campus and you're paying rent. I should point out financial aid, there's no financial aid for winter break. So if you're living off campus, you might want to budget for 10 months instead of the 9-month academic year, because I'm sure your landlord won't be happy if you don't pay your December or January rent. Just as a heads up on that. So you've got all these costs, right? Now how are you going to pay for it? Well, hopefully you've all done the FAFSA, the California Dream application, and then the outcome of that would be grants. So we won't get too much in the California Dream application. If you have questions specifically about those, definitely email your financial aid representative from our website, and we can go over that in greater detail. Likewise, with the California Dream application, we have an entire Dream application section on the financial aid office website. So you just need to get there, and there's a whole section that you can read through on that. But primarily, most people file the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, and that's the baseline from which all federal and state aid is determined. You probably heard about that March 2nd Cal Grant deadline. Well, that's for the state aid, right? The feds don't have a deadline for the FAFSA. It just is what it is. But in the state of California, we have state financial aid, and that March 2nd application date is very important. You need to file your FAFSA as soon as possible, October 1st, or the Dream application by October 1st, and hopefully no later than March 2nd of every year, so you don't miss out on state financial aid. Then there's also loans. So when you file a FAFSA, the feds are always going to offer you loans, regardless if you check the box on there. That's just to gather interest. So the federal government considers student loans and parent loans to be financial aid, just to be clear. A lot of times parents and students like to say, we didn't get anything. Well, the feds will say, yeah, we awarded you loans. But at the end of the day, the student's the primary bearer of the cost of education, and then their parents if they're considered dependent by the feds, right? And so just to manage expectations, the feds do consider loans to be financial aid, and unfortunately, that's what most people receive. Maybe in the future, they'll do better than that. There's also federal work study. That's limited. We get an allocation, so not everybody who's eligible is going to be awarded work study. We give that out on a first come, first served basis. If you don't have it in your award offer, that doesn't mean you can't have it. For people who don't find a work study job at the start of the semester, we're going to cancel it and re-award it to people who do find a work study job. Now, work study, you actually have to go out, look for the job, apply for it, and get hired, and you get a monthly paycheck for hours that are worked. So if you work 10 hours a week at $10 an hour, you can kind of do the math there if you need to. But at the end of the day, if you're not offered federal work study, that doesn't mean you can't have it. Please check back with the financial aid office at Sonoma State about a month into the fall semester. If people didn't take out their award, we will certainly cancel it for those who didn't get a work study job and re-award it to those who don't have work study that are willing to find a job. And the benefit of work study is it doesn't count against you as income on a future FAFSA. Whereas if you worked at a regular off-campus job, all your earnings would count against you on a future FAFSA application. The benefit of work study is it allows you to try out the field of work, and those monies that you earn aren't counted against you on the FAFSA. Now for scholarships, that's a whole nother animal there at the bottom. Those you got to find on your own and seek out on an individual case-by-case basis and apply for them. I strongly encourage people to apply for scholarships year-round. You never know what you get until you apply, right? And then I always tell you, hey, watch out for scholarship scams. If you have to pay money to get free money, that's a scam, right? Joe's Scholarship Service charges you $100 because students like an easy button. I'll go find you some scholarships if you pay me $100. Well, maybe he found you two $10 scholarships and just kept $80 of your dollars, if that makes any sense. So I say if you're going to look for scholarships, usually start with your school's website, right? That's a safe place. And I would check out our school's scholarship office website when you get a chance. So there's some of the ways you could pay for college besides money from savings and money from work and all that good stuff. So here's a typical freshman package. And I know we have people in here that aren't just freshmen. It varies. We'll have transfer students, maybe a graduate student or two. And sometimes we get a credential student for Seawolf Decision Day. Primarily though, most of the people attending are freshmen. And this is a typical package for a freshman, right? You have a cost of attendance on campus, off campus with parents. That's the on-campus cost of attendance, which you'll see on our website. It's $26,724. Of course, your costs could be higher. What if you choose the most expensive dorm and to live by yourself, right? So a cost of attendance is just an average. Everybody has to be treated kind of equally in the federal government's view. So your actual housing costs could vary. You know, some students prefer to live in the most expensive dorm and by themselves. So your on-campus costs will be greater, but for most students, it's going to fall within that $26,724 average. Then there's a subsidized and unsubsidized loan. As a first-time freshman, the maximum amount of loans you can have is $5,500. That's $2,750 a semester. And then there's the Parent Plus loan, which a lot of people actually don't take. It's just there as an option if you want it. And what I want to point out on this slide is the federal government likes to say we completely funded the student's education. But if you notice, if you get the maximum student loan, look at the parent loan. The parent loan is just what the student loan didn't cover as part of that cost of attendance. So what is Carson saying? The amount of the Parent Plus loan is just a catch-all for the amount of unmet cost of attendance that wasn't covered by any student aid. So think of it kind of as a dumping ground. Anything that wasn't covered by student aid is just going to show up in the Parent Plus loan as that cost of attendance. But you don't have to borrow loans to pay for college. In fact, you don't even have to apply for financial aid to pay for college. You could put it on a credit card, which I don't recommend. You know, you could pay with a shoebox full of hundreds if you have that, or money from relatives or money from work. But if you do have to borrow a loan, you know, be wary. There's subsidized, unsubsidized loans for students. We'll get into that a little bit more later. And then there's also the Parent Plus loan. And there's a little bit of different nuances for each one. But remember, deposits are not paid in spring. So here's what a lot of students find out. They find out that they have a hole of $350 in their budget in spring. Why is that? Well, you don't have the $50 enrollment reservation deposit prepaying your spring charges by $50. And you don't have a spring housing deposit prepaying your spring housing charges by $300. So when you make your budget, you should make it understanding that in spring, your financial aid is going to travel $350 less because you don't have $350 of deposits prepaying your spring charges. I hope that made sense, because a lot of people fall down on that and really do have a $350 gap in their budget in spring. So you kind of want to budget for that in advance. Oftentimes I hear, well, I would have worked more over winter break, or I would have worked more over summer. And that's the benefit of sitting down and doing not only just an annual picture of the 9-month cost of attendance, but breaking it down into a 1-semester budget. Then you're going to know if you're over or short ahead of time. Because a lot of times I have to tell a student, I'm like, sorry, I don't have a time machine. I can't go back to winter break and say, hey, you need to work 10 hours a week, right? So you want to forecast out. It's a really good idea to do a budget. So for direct loans for students, a lot of students take out the subsidized loan at the very least. Now they always offer 2 loans, subsidized and unsubsidized, or just all unsubsidized. Financial aid is a means-tested program. It is based on your income, assets, household size, number in college, age of the oldest parent, and I can go on forever. There's a lot of variables to this. So, but just be aware, not everybody's offered a subsidized loan. It's based on what's called financial need, and your FAFSA spits out an index number called the expected family contribution. And the feds are going to tell you that's a measurement of the family's financial strength to pay for college. But really, it's just an index number to see if you qualify for the Pell Grant and how much, right? Or to find out what your financial need is. Cost of attendance minus EFC equals financial need. You don't have to remember any of this. Just know that that EFC number is an index number used to determine your financial aid eligibility. So some students have a really high EFC and only get offered an unsubsidized loan. But at the end of the day, if you're offered loans, you want to take the subsidized loan over the unsubsidized loan. Why? Well, that's because the government pays the interest quarterly 4 times a year while you're in college. If you take out the unsubsidized loan, that just becomes compound interest 4 times a year. Typically, a student will get mailed an interest statement and it'll say you can pay the interest now, or you don't have to make a payment until you go into repayment. And most people don't make a payment, and that's where they rack up all that compound interest. So the subsidized loan is subsidized because the federal government pays the interest on that loan for 4 times a year while you're in college, and the unsubsidized loan accrues interest quarterly, becomes compound interest. There is a loan origination fee, by the way. The feds charge on student loans. So think about this. For every $1,000 you borrow, the feds keep $10 of it. So if you had a $1,000 subsidized loan, then you're only going to get $990 net, for example. Then at the bottom there, they're fixed rates, and the rates are different every year. Rates usually come out by July 1st. I put in this presentation, the rates for 1920 loans. So that's fall 2019, spring 2020. And the reason why I did that is just so you can see where we're currently at, but the new interest rates that'll come out for 2020, 2021 usually show up around July 1st, and it'll be a fixed rate for loans taken out that year. Whether they're subsidized or unsubsidized, it'll be the same. The next major source of funding in terms of loans is the Parent Plus loan. It's always unsubsidized loans, so it's gonna accrue interest 4 times a year. The current interest rate is 7.08 fixed for 1920. The loan rates for 2021 will be out by July 1st. Payments are, and this is where these nuances come into that I was talking to you about earlier. For student loans, you don't enter repayment on the subsidized loan and unsubsidized loan until 6 months after you graduate, fall below half-time enrollment, or leave college, right? You get a 6-month grace period. Well, with Parent Plus loans, it's not like that. The third bullet point says payments are due after loan is fully dispersed. Well, that's spring. So when the second portion of your Plus loan disperses in spring, you're going to be expected to start making payments. So it's a little bit different than the student loans. Then there's an origination fee the feds charge that's 4%, right? So if you borrowed $1,000 in Parent Plus loan, you're only going to get $960 net, if you think about it that way. There's also a delayed repayment option. It says at the bottom there, delayed repayment option may be requested. What they don't like to advertise is when you take out a student loan or a parent loan, you're doled out randomly to one of the loan servicers that are contracted out by the federal government. If you decide to take out a Parent Plus loan, you can contact that loan servicer and ask for an in-school deferment on at least half-time basis. And they'll put your Parent Plus loan into deferment just like they would a regular student loan, where you won't begin payments until 6 months after the student graduates, leaves college, or stops attending, right? But again, that's something you'll have to pursue with the loan servicer once you've took out a loan. Let's hit the next slide. Both parents and student loans, you're going to get half in fall and half for spring. So if you get a $5,500 amount in student loans, you're going to get $2,750 in fall, subtract the loan fee, you're going to get $2,750 in spring. Now, a lot of times people overborrow and they want to return the money. So you have up to 30 days just to send back the check. If you get a refund check, let's say your financial aid plus loans is greater than all of your charges and you get back a check for $1,300. You might want to just send the check back to our Seawolf Service Center and have that go back on the loan so it's less money that you owe later on, right? So you get new loans offered to you every year, but we'll talk about that in a second. Now, what if you cancel, decline, or reduce your loans? You can always ask for them back. We have loan change forms downloadable from our website. You got to give us a signature. So let's say you declined all your loans and you were great for fall. You paid everything, but you find that you're $2,000 short in spring. Well, then I'd look into only taking $2,000 as subsidized loan money, right? Factor in the loan fee, maybe ask for a little bit more than $2,000. And you could just turn in a form to get that back. Because remember, the subsidized loan doesn't accrue interest while the student's in school. The unsubsidized loan does, and the Parent Plus loan does. So now we have some very important reminders. And this came out to you in your award offer. If you don't have an award offer, I'll get to that in a minute. So a lot of people attending today should already have a financial aid office award or award offer from our office. Students must read and understand the help book on our website. Let's kind of talk about things like using my SSU, using SSU email. And the reason why I mention that to you is when you come to a college campus, we have this expectation that you regularly check your campus issued email. It's a source of communication that the student can't change or forget to update. So once you matriculate, which is a fancy word for being able to register for classes, you'll start getting emails to your SSU email. And it's very important that students check that regularly, because a lot of times parents will be like, I called because my student says everything's fine, and it's been 3 months and I haven't heard anything and I don't feel everything's fine. Then I congratulate the parent for following their gut instinct and saying, you're right, the student has 3 to-do list items. We've sent 8 urgent notices to their SSU email address. And then the parent will be like, I'm so glad I called. And I'll be like, I am too. So here's what you need to do to get things back on track. So it's important to know we're not the only office that sends out emails. You can get emails from student health, from your professor, from admissions and records. The reason why we send it to the SSU email is it's a guaranteed form of communication that the student cannot change or forget to update. So just a reminder there, there's that expectation that when students matriculate, they'll check their SSU email address regularly. And until you've deposited and done that, we're still sending emails to the email address you applied to the university with. But once the university gives you an SSU email, all future communications will go to that email address. It's also important for students to check their to-do list in MySSU for any outstanding financial aid requirements. That's at the to-do list in their student center. A lot of financial aid requirements prevent the awarding or disbursement of aid. Students must accept declined loans and federal work study in MySSU. You can read about this on our website. Also, students must meet satisfactory academic progress to maintain financial aid eligibility. That's also found on our website. You must reapply for financial aid every year. Here's something that happens quite often. I get parents and students that show up in the next fall semester going, I don't understand why Johnny's aid and my student doesn't have aid. And I'll be like, you got to file a FAFSA every year or a DREAM application every year. I get dozens of people who forget to do this. It's so important. You got to do it every October. Every October, it should just be on your calendar. Apply for financial aid. But the other kicker is, I hear this also from students. Well, I just wanted a financial aid. I didn't really want to take classes. The only way you're going to get to keep your financial aid is you reapply every year, and you have to pass your classes. If you don't, you'll have to appeal, and sometimes appeals get denied, right? There's always that possibility. So it's important to pass your classes. Now, I want to highlight something. It's important to always go to the source. That finaid@sonoma.edu email you see there is checked daily. There's our website, web.sonoma.edu/finaid. And here's a heads up, we're converting to a new website, but it'll be laid out the same. So you may see it change in the coming weeks, but that's okay. It's all the same information there. Maybe it'll give you another opportunity to re-explore the site. And then MySSU, where the Student Center is located and the award offer is SSU Online Services. Hopefully you guys can still see my screen. Here's the Financial Aid Office website. For example, here's the help book. Here's satisfactory academic progress. Things you might also want to note, disbursement calendars, they're spring. We don't have fall available, but we do disperse financial aid throughout a semester. The fall should be up sometime soon. In filling out your worksheets that I'm going to put up for you, there's the cost of attendance. Here's where we got our 2674. Going back to home, location and hours, contact us. Just go up here to log in. There's where you're going to get to your student center, your financial aid award offer. Then I prepared some sheets for you. I'm going to put these up on the Financial Aid Office webpage. So you can come back and get those from the Financial Aid Office webpage. But here's a worksheet for you to help to try to put the numbers together. Here's page 1. You're adding up your costs. You're adding up your resources to pay for aid. The second worksheet, are you over or short? Do you need to look for a part-time job? More about deferment. But again, I think the key takeaway here is if you need assistance, go to the source. Please contact the Financial Aid Office direct if you need questions answered or assistance in understanding the financial aid process. There's our homepage, contact us, como comunicarse, email address, phone, fax, all that good stuff. And then understanding your cost of attendance, you could read this later. I kind of just put that in there at the end. And like I said, there's things that students often forget to include. And here's just the breakdown from our website. I'm sorry that there's not time for a Q&A, and we're about 1 minute over, but again, go to the source. If you have questions, contact us, email your rep, call the main line. email finate@sonoma.edu. Now, here's the thing. When you put these resources together, if you don't have a financial aid award offer, right, we can give you an award offer estimate. But again, you want to email the appropriate financial aid representative. You can have an estimate to try to figure out if Sonoma is affordable for you or not until your award offer is in place. So hopefully that covers most of the details. I know I'm 2 minutes over, but that was a lot of ground. And I'm sorry we don't have time for questions and answers, but is there anything else you'd like me to add, Erin?
I think that's great. Everyone, as I put in the chat box, this recording, including the PowerPoint, will be made available to all students who have attended. So just check your emails in the coming weeks, and there should be an email coming from us with a link to all of the recordings of these webinars. So you'll be able to view the PowerPoint as well as Carson's helpful information as many times as you need to again. Moving forward, please just direct all questions, as Carson said, to the general financial aid email or your specific representative, which he just had up on the screen and which I have put in the chat box. Otherwise, thank you all so much, and please head on over to your next session.
Thank you all. Have a good one.
Thank you.